This episode is sponsored by Day by Day Book, a guided journal that helps you navigate the ups and downs of change while creating a life you love. For more information on the classic, recovery, or teen day book, go to livedaybyday.com.
When I was a kid, I just didn't know portion control. Maybe I was emotional eating already, but at that age, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. It wasn't until my freshman year, I was still just eating how I was. I was always super active, but I just kept gaining weight. And so finally, after a coach really got on me and was like, well, you can't even run up and down the court as fast as I need you to. I think it was just my breaking point of like, okay, I need to change something. So I flip-flopped and just quit eating because I had all these expectations placed upon me that I needed to be better. I needed to do this. I needed to look a certain way. So everything changed.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. Overcoming challenges at a young age can shape one's view of the world in a profound way while planting important seeds that may lead them to share their experience to help others. Kourtney Talkington struggled with her weight from childhood, and as she grew into a young adult, it soon developed into disordered eating. As she was able to overcome this and begin to heal, at age 18, she had her first child. With 3 more children to follow, each pregnancy brought a new set of challenges, as she had to learn to accept her weight gain each time and create a new relationship with her body. She is now a mother of 4 living in rural Kansas, who is on a powerful mission to help others break free from food guilt and build a balanced, fulfilling relationship with it. Drawing on her bachelor's degree in nutrition and health, Kourtney realizes the need for a more compassionate, sustainable approach to nutrition, which led her to embrace mindful eating as a core pillar of her work. With her ability to blend practical knowledge with real-life experiences, Kourtney is passionate about empowering women to find joy and fulfillment in food, life, and themselves. Kourtney, it is such a joy to have you here with us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Kourtney, we usually get started kind of wherever you want to begin, but I wanted to talk a little bit about before you became a mom, and I know we can hear the kiddos in the background, so we got kids home today sick, so we're going to all roll with it. But you've got 4 little ones.
Yes.
Before you had your first baby, tell us a little bit about your life.
I struggled with weight my whole life. I know my mom had taken me in and was just like trying to be proactive to see if they could figure out if something was wrong with me. So there was something wrong with me. I had to solve what was wrong with me. And that started anywhere between kindergarten and 2nd grade, which I feel like even women, as we get older, we still face that because we go to the doctor and what's one of the first things they bring up? What the number is on the scale. Even if your labs are good and whatever else is fine, they're still questioning you on your BMI.
Yes.
Is too high, which that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day on how the BMI scale should not even be used anymore. So I feel like that resonates with young people, teenagers, adults. But I feel like when we're a child or a teenager, it really affects us because in our brains, we're like, okay, there's something wrong with us. We're doing something wrong. What can I do to fix it? So like you're having this from your doctor and potentially your parents because they're trying to help you to the best of their ability. But then you have all your relationships with your friends on the other side of things that are also weighing in on you. And then at the time I was growing up, social media really started becoming a thing between 7th grade and my senior year of high school is when Instagram and Facebook really got, I would say Facebook was already there, but it was introduced more to me between 7th grade and 12th grade. And so you're having this whole other thing telling you that there's something wrong with you, throwing all of these fixes or things you could change. And I feel like our mind is so, or like it adapts to whatever's around us. So like there's all these things from all these sources getting thrown at you that you should look a certain way, you should feel a certain way, and you should be a certain way. And so like those box or that box and those constraints are already placed on you at a very young age. I feel like it's not talked enough about that, like, just be yourself, and you don't have to fit in a box. Like, you don't have to be a certain way.
So what was your experience with that? You felt pressure at an earlier age to be that way. Did that become sort of the impetus or the sort of springboard into how you started eating and kind of more structured ways of eating? Is that like what brought you to that place?
Yes, I would say so. So when I was little, I don't remember ever really questioning who I was or my personality or anything like that. It wasn't until junior high, high school, where people were like, well, you're really loud and you talk a lot and you have a great personality, but you don't look a certain way. So I don't want to be your friend, or I don't want to date you. So you're already having all of that. It starts putting thoughts in your brain and you're questioning yourself instead of listening to yourself already. And so I feel like as a young adult, it shapes your entire life. Like your mind, your body, and like your everyday choices are all affected. It's like a cycle. They are all intertwined. And so it not only was affecting my weight and my well-being, but it was also affecting my relationships with other people, my relationship with myself, because I already had all of these things being said about myself that I think in the back of my head I knew wasn't true. But when you're hearing it so often, or you're seeing things everywhere saying that you're wrong or that what you're doing isn't okay, then I think it just weighs on you and eventually you just crack. And that's kind of what happened with me. I just finally cracked and I wasn't myself anymore. And so not only did I have to relearn my eating habits that were completely destroyed, I had to like rebuild myself, which I am still working on that 10, 12, 15 years later.
The eating, disordered eating happened when you were age what?
I would say honestly, when I was a kid, I just didn't know portion control, or like I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe I was emotional eating already, but at that age, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. It wasn't until my freshman year, I was still just eating how I was. I was always super active and did all the sports activities that I could just because I enjoyed it. But I just kept gaining weight. And so finally, after a coach really got on me and was like, well, you can't even run up and down the court as fast as I need you to. I think it was just my breaking point of like, okay, I need to change something. So I flip flopped and just quit eating because I had all these expectations placed upon me that I needed to be better. I needed to do this. I needed to look a certain way. So everything changed. And so I went the other way about age 15 or 16. But I think there was some things there already earlier than that. I just didn't recognize it because I was a kid. I was trying to enjoy myself. And honestly, that's not what a kid should be focusing on in the first place.
Right. Well, so when you say you just didn't, what did that look like for you?
At one point, I ate an apple a day, and that was it for probably 6 to 8 months, and nobody really said anything.
At the end of that 6 to 8 months, like where were you? Were you at a very low weight that it was obvious that, I mean, I would imagine.
I lost over 100 pounds. So I
Whoa.
went from like 230 down to like 130 in about 8 months. And I love my rural area. We didn't know anything really about eating disorders at that time, nor was there help in the area to even have help. There was a rumor going around school that I was on drugs.
So people were noticing though.
Yeah. They noticed the weight loss, but instead of like bringing it up to me, which honestly, with how bad of a mindset I was in, I honestly don't know if I would have came from a place of responding in a healthy way or not, because it's just like depression or anxiety. If you're not ready to hear that you have a problem, you're not going to accept it. So even if they would have said something along the lines, I don't know how I would have responded at that point.
So you're 16 at this point, because I know then at 18 you got pregnant. So between 16 and 18, is that when something happened where you made a change?
So actually, I had a really low point in my life and I flip-flopped and went to what they call now binge eating disorder. So it was like very much on the forefront at that point, and I don't think a lot of doctors around here even knew that term, but someone suggested a therapist out of a place about an hour and a half from here that was like, she is good with like emotional eating. She should go see her. So I like went to binge eating is what she told me that I was struggling with. So I flip-flopped from not eating at all to binge eating. So I was eating a lot of food at one time, mostly surrounded by guilt, shame, thinking I wasn't good enough. So like those thoughts that were already placed on me at a younger age, saying I was doing things wrong, it ultimately caught up with me and ended up flip-flopping to this binge eating disorder.
So your weight goes up at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
I was struggling with, well, now I'm putting on all this weight because not only was I getting positive feedback on my weight loss because nobody realized what I was struggling with, but everybody's like, man, you look so good now. And you get treated so differently. And just all that positive reinforcement, I just was like, yay, I'm actually doing something right for once. So, like, feeding that people pleasing gene that I feel like a bunch of us have picked up. So, I was people pleasing everyone, and everyone was so happy for me. And I was finally looking a way that everyone told me I needed to look. It was like feeding the emotional side too, on like, I was getting told I did everything wrong, but then now I was doing everything right. And so that's how I thought I needed to look. Gaining weight was almost even harder than losing the weight because now I was feeding my emotional side that I was missing things out on. It was kind of like a catch-22 either way. And nobody talks about, like, they're like, once you lose the weight, you'll feel great and all these things. But that's not what happens. You have to work on what's in the inside too, and how you talk to yourself, how you treat those negative thoughts that pop in your head of, well, my belly is huge, or I am still fat and I'm unworthy of love or loving myself, or I can't have that piece of cake. I can't go hang out with my friends because they're going to a social gathering at a restaurant and I can't handle being around food and being at a place surrounded by food, which I feel like now is my biggest regret is I missed out on a lot of things in my teenage years that I can never get back. I missed out on so many celebrations with my friends because I would avoid it because pizza was there. And for me, that was like a bad food, or what I labeled as a bad food.
What was the turning point then for you? What was it that finally made a difference?
Getting pregnant with my son started the change because I knew my eating disorder was not good for growing a child. So I used that as fuel for a while. But the thing I realize now is there's going to be cycles throughout our life. So, like for me, every pregnancy, like you talked about in the intro, that was a new learning experience and a new learning cycle, and having to adjust my mindset all over again. Not only that, but so right after I had my first son, my grandma passed away, and she was like my lifeline and my second mom. And so losing her triggered the eating disorder again. Like it was another thing I had to learn through because it was my first time dealing with grief. So like there's another cycle of I had to relearn everything all over again and teach myself how to deal and how to cope with things all over again because something new was thrown at me. And I feel like all of us deal with that just in different ways. And we just have to treat ourselves with respect because not only like pregnancy changes your body, but as we age. So like I just had my 29th birthday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I will be going through my 30s and 40s and your 50s, and your body changes. And so you have to learn to love yourself through every cycle in your life. And so I know people are like, once you lose the weight, you'll never have to deal with your emotions or your feelings or your looks ever again. That is bullshit.
You have the first baby. And I mean, I imagine, like you said, there's a turning point in your mind of like, this is not sustainable. Obviously, sustain another life and have this pregnancy. So, throughout your first pregnancy, did things start to shift in terms of your mindset around eating? Or was it more like thinking about something outside of yourself, which kind of shifted?
I think it was more like shifting it to like, this isn't good for him, or like getting outside of my body, but then you have to like get back into your body, which I feel like even with pregnancy, all of us go through that too. Like you're growing this human and it just comes out one day and then you finally have your body back, kind of, but not really. And so like it's a whole nother learning curve of I emotionally feel different after every pregnancy too. I know like my postpartum anxiety, and I really do think I had some postpartum depression with him, not only because I think hormones had a huge part to play in it, but I was also a young mom. I also lost my grandma. So, like, that's another situation of the cycle. And you have to find something that matters to you to move forward. So, another turning point for me in my eating journey was when I studied abroad in Italy as a mother of two, and just seeing how they use food as like connection and joy, and they don't focus on like what it does for us. I feel like as Americans, we always focus on macros or like protein, fat, carbs, which, yes, in certain settings is great. And I do feel like you can focus on that, but also it leads to some disordered eating and feeling guilty about making certain food choices. And over there, most of them are slender people. They eat lots of carbs, but they enjoy it and it brings a satisfaction to them. So they're not scavenging their kitchen for something else because they ate what they wanted to eat.
I was going to say, it's like my memory of Italy in a big way is like, first of all, they walk everywhere, which is just kind of natural for them, which is not necessarily the case for us. But they also savor their food and they take the time out, and meals are an event. They are not something that like what we do where we can quickly.
Hustle, hustle, hustle. Yep.
Yes,
Hustle, hustle,
yes.
hustle. And that's what I kind of want to bring back. I want to help women shift from the hustle, hustle, hustle and kind of sit back and embrace their feelings, because I feel like we're in a movement right now where you're supposed to embrace your feelings and like help your kids embrace their feelings and make sure their feelings are felt. But I feel like it hasn't really gotten to the food side of things yet, where like I don't know, I had those no foods. So like for me it was pizza, ice cream, peanut butter. Those were like kind of my trigger foods, or my foods that I were like, those are super unhealthy. And it's because of I feel like at that point peanut butter was always said it's too high in fat and fat is bad for you and makes you fat. And same with ice cream and pizza. But that's where you kind of have to challenge your thoughts. You can sit in your thoughts for a while, but you also have to challenge them and be like, well, where is this coming from? And why do I feel this way? And that's where I'm like so happy for this movement of like feeling our feelings. But now I really want people to feel their feelings about food and how it makes them feel too. It can bring you joy. If I make my grandma's recipes and we have them at Christmas, what does that bring me? That brings me joy and satisfaction, and it brings her memory back. And I'm also introducing that to my kids so that hopefully one day they can be like, I remember when my mom made this recipe.
Yes,
It's
yes.
going to bring them joy, and they can pass it on to their kids if they want. And I feel like we've kind of lost that a little bit. That whole experience shifted my mind. Like it shifted my brain somehow. And it just made me feel whole, I guess, and like joyful about food and like finding the experiences that bring that to you. So, like in our rural area, we have wheat harvest, and wheat harvest is a big deal. And the women usually bring out meals to the men, and we just all stop everything for an hour and we sit and have a conversation. It's fun, and the kids get to come hang out and look around on the equipment and stuff. And so, like, it's just another experience that, like, that is one memory for me that I'll never forget as I age.
Well, and I think what's interesting too is how you say the association that you have with anything in life can be either good or bad. And so to change that with food and make it more of a celebratory thing, the constraints and all of the things that might have come along with the baggage that you held around food. I don't want to say, I mean, baggage is like the first word that comes to mind, but the thoughts around it, or the complexity that happened around food when you were younger about your self-worth and all of those other things, it sort of detaches that, and it
Yep.
becomes more of a thing to enjoy. So after you got back from Italy, and I know you had 3 more babies after that, so you've been a mom, you have been doing some work with It's Nourish and Flourish, right? Is that you've
Yep.
been doing some coaching? Tell us a little bit more about kind of what you're doing now and the word that you're spreading.
I try to get women to choose a word, like a negative word. It can be about their body, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about a certain food, if a food is challenging for them. So, like, kind of how I talked about, I had those negative foods. So, I start with them challenging that one word because I feel like I struggle with overwhelm. And so, like, if I have all these things I'm trying to overcome, I'm never going to make any progress on it. And so I make them choose one word and I make them sit with it for a few minutes and try to figure out one, why they feel that way about this place or thing or whatever and where it came from. For me, I could probably choose disgust because at one point I was disgusted with my body and disgusted with myself because I couldn't get myself under control. And the reason I felt that way was multiple things: myself, my mindset, society, and social media, and what I had let social media place on my brain, which at that age, I feel like we just don't realize.
Mm-hmm. So this is good because it's almost like getting to the root of something that has stuck with you for a long, long time. And have you found that people resonate with that in terms of being able to kind of get themselves to think differently? Because you said something earlier that really struck me that I am a big proponent of, and that is challenging your thoughts, right? Of like when we're young, we take our thoughts just for granted. It's like, that's just a thought I have. And there's no, this is my opinion or this is my belief. But when we start to challenge those and really pause and think about, is that really true?
Well, and where did it come from? Where did it come from? There's a reason you're thinking that way. You didn't just magically think that one day and just be like, I just thought this about myself.
Right. So Kourtney, what are you doing now? Are you working with women? Are you doing group work, or is it mostly like one-on-one as
So I'm doing small group coaching because I feel with how heavy some of our feelings can be, I will eventually probably extend it to a larger group, but I am focusing on smaller groups so that I feel like women can be more trustworthy of the women in their group and more of like a community and knowing that they're not alone in things. And I also am doing some speaking engagements. I have a speaking engagement at a conference here in February, literally a month away here as of yesterday. So I will be
nice?
doing a workshop there, kind of like some of the same things I just talked about, like starting challenging your thoughts a little bit. And honestly, what I teach, it pertains to all parts of life because I feel like even if you don't struggle with emotional eating, everyone has negative thoughts.
So true.
So that's where I feel like going to therapy, doing all these things, it all rounds out together.
Yes.
Physical movement. I'm a big proponent of physical movement because that's how I process my thoughts. So if I don't get physical movement, which right now it's like today is decent, but like next Monday is supposed to be like 17 with a low of 0.
Tell everybody where you are. Where are you in Kansas?
So I live in Western Kansas, so I'm about 5 hours from Denver and 5 hours from Kansas City. So I'm like smack dab in the middle of nowhere.
I love that though. And you're on the family farm, right? So you've gone
Yes.
back to live in the family. I think that's so wonderful. And I think, Kourtney, you are just getting started. And I love that the passion that you have behind this, I know is going to help a ton of people.
Well, and I can really resonate with people. And like I said, my journey is not over. So I am also still in the depths. Like I will openly admit, this Christmas break for my kids was not my strong suit. I very much struggled and I ate a lot of sugar and it's fine.
Like us all. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like everyone. But like that's a whole nother topic. Like we're taught that sugar isn't everything during the holidays, but like who placed that rule on us?
True.
Like that's
Very
another
true.
questioning thought. Like who placed these food rules on us of XYZ. And like you can challenge those things, but that's up to you and up to you realizing that
Yes.
that is a problem for you if it is, if it's not.
Yes.
Everyone has their own views on things. That's where I chose to use my pain to fuel my purpose.
I love that, Kourtney. I think you're going to do some real good in this world. And we need to stay in touch because I think your speaking engagements are probably going to take off from what we've talked about. And I know you're passionate about that too.
Yes, I'm so excited. I love connecting with new people. I love hearing their stories, and everyone is so different. And I just like seeing how people are different and learning from that because I feel like it makes me a better speaker, a better mentor, because I'll be learning things that I wouldn't have thought of, or I didn't feel that way, but somebody else could have felt a different way. So it brings on a new perspective for me to question or things to change or build on.
Well, and to provide maybe what you might not have had way back when you were struggling, right?
Yep.
Kourtney, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a pleasure to meet you, and I love to hear what you're doing, and we will be in touch and to see how everything's going with you. But thank you so much for being such a special guest.
No, thank you for having me, and I can't wait to hear what your listeners think.
Okay, well, that's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.